On today's episode of Locked on Wild, one last ride on the Brock Faber for Calder Trophy train.
You're Locked on Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked on Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you, as always, for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I'll admit it, I've got a little bit of a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. On today's episode of Locked on Wild, we'll discuss the finalists for the Calder Trophy, which include Brock Faber. We'll talk about Marco Rossi not making the final three, and we'll look at one final case for Brock Faber to win the Calder Trophy. My name is Seth Topal, your daily Minnesota Wild insider, and it's finally here. We finally know the finalists for the Calder Trophy. And it is, ironically, the top three finishers in points among rookies in the NHL. Connor Bedard, Luke Hughes, and Brock Faber make up the three finalists that are all vying for the Calder Trophy. Connor Bedard, obviously the number one overall pick, and played 68 games this season, 22 goals, 39 assists, 61 total points. And on a Chicago team that is not great at all, Bedard definitely stood out when he played. Did miss a good handful of games with a fractured jaw, but did not miss a beat when he came back into the lineup after suffering that injury. In fact, got himself up to just about a point per game with how he finished the regular season once he finally came back into the lineup. So Bedard obviously tops a strong rookie class, to say the least. And some of the highlights for Bedard: had a 5-point game on March 12th against the Anaheim Ducks, had a handful of 3-point games as well throughout the season, had back-to-back 2-goal games on November 9th and November 12th. And again, those 22 goals led all rookies this season. So a strong case for Connor Bedard to win the Calder Trophy here this year. And interesting that two defensemen are the other two finalists for the Calder this year. You look at some of the others that did not make the cut. Logan Cooley played in all 82 games, finished with 20 goals, 24 assists, and 44 total points, including a 13-point on the power play effort for Cooley this season. Marco Rossi, obviously, 21 goals, 19 assists. Luke Evangelista, 80 games. He had 16 goals, 23 assists, 39 total points. Matthew Nyes had 80 games played, 15 goals, and 20 assists. Tyson Forrester played in 77 games. He had 20 goals, 13 assists, 33 total points. Some of the rookie leaders highlighting this year's class. But the other two players, as mentioned, Luke Hughes and Brock Faber. And Hughes finished tied with Faber with 47 points. He also played 82 games, played the full season, had 9 goals, 38 assists, finished with 25 power play points, which led all rookies, 25 power play points, and played 21 minutes, 28 seconds per night. Bedard was at 19 minutes, 47 seconds per night. And then you look at Brock Faber's case. Faber had 8 goals, 39 assists, 47 points in his rookie season, played the full 82 games. He had 16 power play points, played 24 minutes, 58 seconds per game, which not only led all rookies, but was up near the top of the list in terms of total ice time for the entire season, let alone just getting some work in, like so many of these other rookies did. And it's interesting, too, because you look at the rookies, and that's not even taking into consideration the goalies. There were a couple of rookie goalies that certainly had great seasons as well. Just not enough to be able to work into the Calder finalists. Peter Kochetkov finished 23-13-4. He had a 2.33 goals against average and a 911 save percentage. You also have Samuel Urson, who is 23-19-7 with a 282 goals against average in 890 save percentage, though. But Kochetkov certainly worthy of getting some looks for one of the finalists, with the fact that he had 4 shutouts and played a ton for Carolina down the stretch, with how just brutal their goalie situation was throughout the course of the season. All told, a very solid rookie class, and we should be very happy that Brock Faber ended up being a finalist, because we'll talk about it here in a little bit, in just trying to make the case for Brock Faber to win. I'm putting all my eggs in the Connor Bedard basket. It's a pretty easy sell for Bedard to win this, because he finished first amongst rookies in goals and first amongst rookies in points. He was a 0.9 points per game player. Yes, he did only play in 68 games, but you extrapolate those numbers out over an 82-game season, and he's pretty close to 30 goals and is right around 70 or 80 points. If he put up those numbers, regardless of the plus minus and regardless of some of the other outlying statistics, if he put up right around 30 goals and 70-ish points in his rookie season, there wouldn't even be a discussion. So it's an impressive body of work going up against the top players on the other team, playing top line minutes pretty much every night he was in the lineup. It's an impressive resume. Chicago it was awful, which is where the plus minus comes in, and it's actually the worst plus minus in quite some time at minus 44. But the fact that he was nearly a point per game player is, I think, what sells it here, and I think that's going to be what leads to him winning, is just the impact that he had from an offensive standpoint when he was in the lineup. That's going to be what wins it for him. However, if there was a case to be made for Brock Faber, where are the areas that Faber can build a strong case to win the Calder Trophy? We'll discuss those as we continue today's episode of Locked on Wilds after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. Today's episode of Locked On Wild also brought to you by Game Time. As the weather continues to trend towards spring and summer, that means that there is going to be no shortage of opportunities to take in America's pastime. The Minnesota Twins play at gorgeous Target Fields. You may decide, hey, it's a great day out. Let's go watch a Major League Baseball game. Let's go sit in the stands, pick up some sun, and grab a couple of adult beverages. Game Time is here to help make those types of experiences possible by making them as stress-free as can be. Game Time offers you last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. They also offer you all-in pricing, which allows you to see the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. They also offer seat views and their lowest price guarantee. That is absolutely stone cold lowest price guarantee. Or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure that you join our Discord server and subscribe on either YouTube or your favorite audio platform so you don't miss out on any off-season content here throughout the next few months. If you are so inclined, make sure to leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Or make sure to drop a like on this video. It helps get us wider circulated to other Minnesota Wild fans. If there was to be a case for Brock Faber to win the Calder Trophy, what would that case be? Well, I'm so glad you asked, because there are a couple of things that go in Brock Faber's favor. Say that 5 times fast. There are a few things that go in his favor that I think can give him a compelling case to be made that he should be able to come away with the Calder Trophy. And basically, as we talked about in the opener, it comes down to goals and points or everything else. And you look at the everything else for Brock Faber here this season. As mentioned, he finished with 47 points, which was near the top of the list in terms of most points in a season for a Wild, not only for a rookie defenseman for the Minnesota Wild, but for a Wild defenseman in general. Like he just put up a season that is just so far and above what you typically see for Minnesota Wild defensemen. Joe O'Donnell making the case for Brock Faber to win the Calder by throwing out some statistics. Listen to this. Brock Faber, the 45th overall selection from the 2020 NHL draft by the Kings, placed third amongst rookies with 8 goals, 39 assists, and 47 total points while skating in all 82 contests. He topped rookies in both average at 24.58 and total 2,047 minutes, 53 seconds in time on ice. The latter was nearly 300 minutes more than the next closest player and the highest single season figure by a rookie since the statistic began being recorded in 1997-1998. His season high for minutes played at over 32 minutes was also tops amongst rookies and was the most near the top of the list of most played in a single game this season. Joe also brings up a great point because, as we noted, Connor Bedard missed a handful of games this season due to a fractured jaw. Brock Faber had fractured ribs. He did not miss a game. And as much as we note that Bedard played top line minutes, played against the best players that the opposing team had at their disposal, that led to a minus 44. And you look at what he was tasked with doing from a face-off perspective. He won 38.9% of his face-offs this year. Had 27 blocks, 54 hits, 47 takeaways, 57 giveaways in the 68 games. For Brock Faber, he played top pairing minutes defensively all season. His role was elevated when Jonas Brodin and Jared Spurgeon both were out of the lineup. And when they returned in some capacity, those responsibilities continued. He drew the toughest assignments the entire season. So he was a top pairing defenseman in 5-on-5. He was a top pairing defenseman on the penalty kill. He played up until the final couple of weeks of the season. He played top power play. And I think it's pretty easy now to connect the dots in him being bumped off the top power play was largely due to the rib injury. Because think about trying to let a shot fly with fractured ribs from the top of the zone. It's pretty easy to connect those dots. Is that was just something that they were trying to have him do less so that it didn't aggravate that injury down the stretch. Still played on the power play for a good majority of the season. He was a top power play option. And you look at the counting stats that Faber threw out there. He had 136 shots on goal in 82 games. He had 150 blocks in 82 games. He had 65 hits. He had 15 takeaways. He had 35 giveaways. He had 26 penalty minutes in 82 games. Connor Bedard had 28 penalty minutes in 68 games. So Faber, more disciplines. Just it's the whole body of work for Brock Faber as opposed to the two main counting stats for Connor Bedard. This feels to me like the Cy Young Award race between Johan Santana and Bartolo Colon from, I think, 2007. Santana had every stat, literally every statistic other than the wins. He had the ERA, he had the strikeouts, the innings pitched, fewer walks, fewer everything else. But Bartolo Colon had the wins. Bartolo Colon got to the 21 win plateau. And as a result, it was one of the more laughable Cy Young votes in Major League Baseball history, with Bartolo Colon winning the Cy Young as a member of the Los Angeles Angels, despite the fact that he had like a 3.7 ERA that season. This feels similar, maybe not as laughable because it's not like Bedard did nothing. 22 goals in 68 games is impressive. 61 points in 68 games is impressive. So it's not like he did nothing to earn the potential to be a Calder finalist. It's just that Brock Faber just did so much for this team because of all the injuries, because of everything that happened to this team down the stretch. It's just such a compelling case for Brock Faber to take home the hardware because of every single thing that he was asked to do for this team. Now, looking at Luke Hughes' body of work, just to kind of throw this in, his statistics for the full season looking like this. So in those 82 games, he had 135 shots on goal. He played 1,761 minutes. So 1,761 was his minute total. Brock Faber's was 2,048. Connor Bedard, 1,345. Again, Bedard missed 14 games. But if you take 14 times 20, I'm just going to round up just to make it easy. If you take 14 times 20, that's 280, and you add that to 1345, you get 1625. So 1625 minutes of ice time is still less than Hughes, and it's 400 minutes less than what Brock Faber did. But some of the other numbers for Hughes: he had 55 blocks, 24 hits, 42 takeaways, 69 giveaways. So Hughes, too, defensively not as active as Faber was, and Hughes was also a minus 25 on the season. So again, points and goals, ladies and gentlemen. That is how we got to where we're at. Top 3 point totals amongst NHL rookies, top 3 finalists for the Calder. Now, are we surprised that Marco Rossi did not make the cut amongst NHL rookies for a finalist? We will take a look at why that was. That Rossi, who seemingly was just right there in the running up until the last bit of the season, we'll discuss to finish today's episode of Locked On Wilds after this. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. And look, I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about Monopoly Go, but there's just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. Currently trying to create parade floats with friends and winning prizes along the way. We're working together trying to build up the best parade float for additional rewards to allow you to work your way through the various boards that Monopoly Go provides. You can win unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, plus cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with. I finally upgraded to a Steam engine for my piece that I am using to play right now. Gold, it looks pretty sweet. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique minigames like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events to help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it now, free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. For tomorrow, we are just going to take one final look at where the Wild ended up statistically this season. We'll take a look at their ranks offensively, their ranks defensively, and their ranks on special teams. And then next week, we are going to start player evals. We're going to kind of combo platter this. We're going to start player evals, and we're also going to mix in some draft discussion as well. So we'll kind of combo platter, and then we'll throw in some bigger picture stuff as well. So keep an eye out for that. Coming up next week, are we surprised that Marco Rossi did not end up as a finalist for Rookie of the Year, Calder Trophy? Well, if you look at how things finished, Rossi ended up 5th in the NHL amongst rookies in points. He finished the season with 40. He was 2nd amongst rookies in goals with 21. He was 1 ahead of Logan Cooley, 1 ahead of Tyson Forrester. And honestly, I think it's just the fact that there were a few players that caught him in the points department that led to Rossi not having enough to be able to seal the deal and be the second Wild player to be a Calder finalist. If you look from March 1st to April 18th amongst rookies in points, Marco Rossi finished the season from March 1st to the end of the year, April 18th. Marco Rossi was tied for 18th amongst rookies with 7 points in the final 22 games of the year. He had 4 goals, 3 assists. So obviously that led to players like Luke Hughes, who had 18 points in the final 23 games of the season. Logan Cooley, who had 11 goals in the final 23 games of the season for 16 points. So I think that was a big reason as to why Rossi got squeezed out at the end of the season. And even if you simplify that down even just a little bit further, Rossi in the final 7 games of the season had 3 total points. He actually 9 games from April 1st to April 18th. Had 3 points in the 9 games, was a -6. But then you look at that and guys like Murat Huznadinov, who got into the lineup in those final 9 games, equaled Rossi's production. Declan Chisholm had 3 points in his final 9 games of the season. And so I think Rossi just kind of got lost in the shuffle down the stretch. And you just saw some of these rookies have great finishes to the season. If we move from February to the end of the year, Luke Hughes had 21 points in his final 35 games. Marco Rossi had 12 points in his final 33 games. So a lot of that due to the fact that the team kind of started to just wilt down the stretch. But some of these rookies had really impressive finishes to the season. I mean, Logan Cooley had 14 goals in the final 34 games that he played this season. And, Matthew Nyes, 7 goals. Luke Evangelista, 7 goals. Zach Benson, 7 goals. Tyson Forrester had 11 goals in his final 28 games. But Luke Hughes paced everybody to get himself back in to the finalist discussion. Brock Faber in the final 33 games of the year had 18 points, 4 goals, and 14 assists. So the counting stats really win out here. And that is, I think, the reason that Marco Rossi did not end up being a finalist for the Calder Trophy here this season. Now, if you look at some of the other things that Rossi did this season, I do want to finish just with his overall body of work this year, because, if you give me an opportunity to talk about Rossi, I'm not going to turn it down. Rossi's overall body of work this year finished the season with 21 goals, 19 assists, 47 penalty minutes in the 82 games. He had 167 shots on net, shot 12.6%, finished with 1,372 minutes in time on ice, which averaged out to 16:44 a game. He won 44.7% of his faceoffs, 37 blocks, 35 hits, 33 takeaways, 21 giveaways. Had Marco Rossi finished his season a little more consistently in the scoring department, he probably ends up as one of the top three. But what do we know about what happened at the end of the season is that when you had the union of Kirill Kaprizov, Matt Boldy, and Joel Eriksson Ek, the secondary scoring dried up at this point. And so I'm super excited that Brock Faber ended up being a finalist. Wish Rossi would have as well, but at the end of the day, if you gave me a vote or you gave me the opportunity to predict who I think wins it, goals and points at the end of the day is the ultimate equalizer. And so I think it's going to be Connor Bedard that wins it. Would be fun if Brock Faber pulled the upset and came away with the Calder Trophy. I think he has the more fully encompassing portfolio this year, but Faber has the stats that we all, or Bedard has the stats that we all keep an eye on the most, which I think is why he's going to win. So that is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Wild. Appreciate everybody tuning in. As always, the off-season content continues. Yes, we are going to get to big topics here as we move towards next season. Just kind of still trying to decompress what we saw this year, and we'll translate that to a full off-season plan. Locked On Wilds will have you covered every step of the way with the draft. We'll do player evals. We've got some other fun that we'll have for the rest of the offseason as well. So make sure that you subscribe on your favorite podcast platforms and on YouTube so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. You can find new episodes every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.